Sekali lagi, bukti penting tentang Rumah Sakit Gaza.
I want to bring in CNN military analyst, retired Lieutenant General Mark Hertling here. General, look, we have some video here, and I want you to just take a look at this. This is some footage that seems to show a rocket going up here, and then something happens that's pretty catastrophic. When you see this, what do you see?
I see a flame out of a rocket. And we've been talking about this all day, and it's a result of what happened yesterday. But when you see that rocket going forward, this happens a lot with these kind of rockets that are supplied by Iran, Abby. It is a rocket motor that doesn't work. It gets a certain distance, and then it just flames out. And a rocket has a trajectory of a brick once it doesn't have a force behind it, so it immediately drops. So you see it right
This is a slow motion
there,
version of that video.
flame out.
Yeah.
So it loses its rocket motor, and then it just drops down. But what you also have when that happens is the fuel that's part of the rocket that hasn't burned. So when it hits the ground, we'll see next
Here's
the
the
explosion.
video of an explosion from a viewpoint from the ground.
Yeah. Now, this isn't a very big piece of ordnance. It's a relatively small ordnance. So the actual explosive isn't that big. But what is big is the fuel that it hasn't used. That caused a lot of cars in that parking lot to burn. We see the after effects of that. We see a very small crater. If it had been a crater
Let's
from
actually take a look at what you're discussing here. I'm going to just break this down a little bit more for folks. This, what I'm showing you here, this is, to be clear, provided by the IDF. This shows what looks like satellite imagery of the area where this rocket may have come down, right? This is the explosion site. They're saying that if you look over here, this is what typically you would see if there was an IDF strike, even as large as 19 meters, a much larger crater. It doesn't seem like we see that here. And we also have some before and after images here. This is the hospital, the Al-Ali hospital. This is the explosion site in this area here. And here it is after.
Yeah.
So you were just discussing the size of the crater. Some of the images are not super clear.
No.
Whether there was a crater or not. But when you look at this is up close at the cars and the site of the fire. What do you see?
Well, what I saw earlier today was a photo of a very small crater about right there. What you see in this area are a lot of burned cars. What you see over here are cars that are not burned. What you see across at this building, if you had a picture of the building, which I think we do, no, I'm sorry.
We don't have an up close of the building, but we do have these.
What we do see is pockmarks on the side of the building.
You can look at this video here, and it shows some
and
of
it
the
will show up here.
aftermath
You
on
see the burned
buildings.
car, but as the camera scans over here, you'll see cars that aren't burned. Very close. So it had an effect of the explosive capability of a rocket, which is relatively small, but a lot of fuel blowing up after it that didn't burn off the rocket motor. So this is evidence of certainly not a bomb that would come off of an aircraft. You see the pockmarks, the blown out windows, but not a whole lot else. I mean, there's not a whole lot of damages to the building. Now, the doctors inside of the building said that there were patients that were injured. That could have been from the blast, glass flying inside of the building, but it certainly wasn't a strike on the hospital itself.
And just briefly, if you were to have seen a strike, a true strike coming from Israel, I want to also just, as I'm saying this, show you, this is an image that shows, according to the IDF, the trajectory of this rocket. And it comes from somewhere inside of northern Gaza, and it goes this direction. It goes east.
What you have here is something called a point of origin. That's where the rocket was fired from, right where that red dot is. You see multiple tracers coming off of those. Those are the different rockets that come out of that rocket pod. The one that came out right here came out over the hospital, and I believe that that was the one that lost its engine and fell on close to the hospital, not on the hospital. So this is part of the proof that the Israeli Defense Forces gave. They said, hey, here, this is something called a Q-36 radar. They use these radars to connect with the Iron Dome to shoot down rockets. So when you see all these coming off of a missile site and one dropping over the top of a hospital, you can see where it was truthfully an accident, a missile that didn't go through to its final mission.
Yeah, and as you've pointed out many times, these Iranian-provided missiles, they tend to do that. General Mark Hertling, thank you very much.
Salam damai dari Fakta Israel.